Start. Okay, we are now live.
All right.
You don't want to meet for 8 hours?
No.
So what time zone are you in then?
Pacific?
Oh, okay, so it's 5:44 your time?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Now, so I was looking up and some of I learned about what it is we're supposed to talk about, and then as well like the length of time, because there's somewhere it said they wanted you to speak for about an hour, but then the teacher said, you know what, some case studies you'll talk for an hour, and others there won't be enough to talk about.
Yeah.
So he's like, I don't stress too much about how much time. Um, but yeah. Oh, that's where it is.
Where was that?
Um, oh, what the teacher had said?
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was somewhere in one of the threads.
Okay.
Maybe it was one of the ones I had started.
Okay.
But I remembered somewhere because someone else asked a question on the weekly discussion board where we're supposed to post the links, where like what we're supposed to use that for. And so I cited that, and then I remember seeing somewhere you're supposed to put a timestamp or something like that for the teacher to go talk. And it's right in the case discussion things. It says you will need to provide a timestamp, which I don't know how to do yet, in
Yeah.
addition to your link, so the instructor will know when the summary begins.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I see that in there. So I guess we can just start with question 1 there. Are these the questions you used when you did your write-up?
partially.
Yeah.
Um, some of these, actually, no, I didn't really use these ones. I probably should. That would help make my case study better.
Yeah. These are the ones I used because I didn't find questions anywhere else. Did you find some anywhere in another place?
Yeah, they have some in, where was it? There's the big, long, like 22-page chapter that we were supposed to read,
Yeah. Good.
about the case studies, and there's questions in there, but then they transferred it over to that Word document called Case Study Guide Analysis. Yeah, Case Study Analysis 1.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, if you scroll down
Mm-hmm.
like helpful questions, it breaks it down to the 4 different categories of
Yeah.
the types, and then questions. And I used some of those,
Okay.
and then I made up some of my own. But this will actually help a lot
Yeah.
looking at
So,
these questions.
yes, I may have done the write-up wrong if we're supposed to use the stuff in the case analysis study guide. Oh well.
Oh
Anyway.
man. Uh-oh.
What?
My laptop. I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
Okay, so the first thing we're supposed to discuss is, what do we think of OSHA's process for identifying opportunities in building companies? Are you still there, Chris?
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, so they have like help you with the outline, kind of what basic questions you could ask, and there's more specific questions and stuff on the sheet to help us out.
Yeah.
I still can't find that where the teacher said don't worry about it. It might be.
Okay.
You know what? One huge blessing about using computers. There's find function on it. Huh. Maybe it was, I think it was in one of the posts where someone was asking a question.
Okay.
Maybe it was in, I don't know, whatever. It was somewhere he said, don't stress too much about the time.
At least on the first one until we learn how to do it. So
Yeah.
should we get started then?
Sorry, I think I found it. Okay. No, that was my first question. Okay, yeah. Because in the questions and conversation section I asked, is there a minimum or maximum requirement for the meetings, time requirement? He said, yes, your group will need to meet for each case study because like next week we have 2 case studies. He says, I don't require an amount of time for your group meetings, and honestly, I don't track that. Some cases won't take as much time as others. It's up to your group to complete the work, but take advantage of learning together beyond just filling in the square.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So
Okay.
question number 1. What do you think of OSHA's process for identifying opportunities and building companies?
Well, for me, when I read through it and thought about it, I thought it was simple but kind of remarkable because he was really observant and he was noticing trends and gaps in the marketplace. Then he started looking for how he could fill those,
Mm-hmm.
better than other places. Because I was impressed with the hole in the ear when he was a teenager. It's like, who's looking at girls that closely when they're teenagers for what their jewelry is? We're looking at girls for other reasons, but not their jewelry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was. I read a similar case study. It was actually the same company, but it was a lot more extensive than this in a different class. And from what I remember from that one, he essentially was just walking around because he had previously made or started the spin pop, those lollipops that you push the button and it would just spin in circles.
yeah.
And so he had already done the R&D for that and sold that company, which I think shows on his resume in this one.
Yeah, he sold that to a toy store, I believe, Hasbro or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he decided, I think he said he was in like the toothbrush section and he noticed there's the manual toothbrushes and then super expensive electric toothbrushes.
Right.
He's like, okay, there's obviously an opportunity right there because, I mean, you get a better clean with the electric toothbrushes, but, there a lot of people, a lot of the market can't get the manual toothbrushes. And then he thought, well, hey, I already have a patent on the motor for um, the spinning lollipop. And he's like, maybe I could use that. And that's what he'd actually used in the first models of the toothbrush.
Yeah. Didn't it continue being that way? Because I know he used the same manufacturer in China.
Mm-hmm. And then I think in this case, it said that they noticed the motor was burning out or something like that. So they just changed the motion or changed the way that the head moved, and
Yeah.
that solved the problem. But yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome how observant of a person he was.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And then just, which is kind of cool because he'd even mentioned in this case study how he kind of felt obligated to his former partners to bring him over to this new venture, but at the same time, it's as if he took the best of the best and guys he'd already worked with before, so he knows there's going to be healthy conflict instead of, um,
Yeah.
problem causing conflict in order to make this business amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of the people in the case study, it said almost all the employees were overqualified for their positions.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And also another thing I noticed that he wanted to keep his company simple. So he didn't have lots of bureaucracy and layers in it. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing and you do this part and we'll do, I'll do another part, and they just got it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that too. And also, I was looking at the revenues and stuff. They did, like, I did the calculations for the revenues they would have made in that um, the last quarter of '99, and they made over 3 million in revenue in just one quarter. I'm like, for your opening quarter of existence, that's pretty dang good.
How did you figure that out?
I just put up an Excel spreadsheet. So what I did is I took, because they said they sold some through FDM and then others through Walmart, Target.
Yeah,
I just averaged the price because they said the one was going to be sold at $6, the other at $5.
right.
So I took 550, then 6,000 units per day, as
But they
well
didn't.
as.
I don't think they sold that much in 1999. That was in early 2000.
Oh, was that?
Yeah, because that's
Oh
Exhibit
yeah.
4. Because I was trying to figure that. Exhibit 4, it says they took 6%. So that's on page 11. They took
Hmm.
6% of the fourth quarter. And then down on where it says retail dollar sales, it says that they had 74.7 million was the total for the category in sales. So I took the 0.6% of that, and I got that they earned $488,200. Well, not earned, but that's what they took in, the revenue.
So that'd be okay. The 0.06%.
I mean, that's how I figured it out. So when you said, I was thinking, oh, what did I do wrong? So I don't know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because in the case study, and then what I did from there is, since they did retail sales between $5 and $6, that it would be somewhere, because so a quarter is approximately 90 days. So that took it down to about $4,980 per day. And between $5 and $6, it was somewhere between 830 and 996 units per day during their first quarter. Because then the case study said that by early 2000, they were selling almost 6,000 units per day. So in the next quarter, I mean, they really made this huge increase.
Wait, so what was the end value you got for their share for that quarter?
Well, it was taking 6% of the total retail dollars, and the total retail dollars for that quarter said it was 74.7 million.
Hmm.
So 0.6% of that is 488,200.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was looking at them all. I didn't get that number, and then I realized it's because I accidentally put 0.06% instead of 0.6.
Yeah, so it would be 0.006 because it's 0.6%. So when you move your decimal,
Well, I put it in an Excel spreadsheet as a percentage,
yeah.
but either way, I messed up. That was my bad.
So
So if they would have kept it up in early 2000, that's probably what they could have had for the first quarter then.
probably if they had that, because that'd be
Okay.
a huge increase.
I am really glad you pointed that out to me. I'd have
So,
looked like an idiot in my write-up.
so you said you took it 550. You just went with that per unit.
Yeah, I did
That's
the average of the two prices. And then I did 365 days divided by 4. I came up with an average of 91.25 days per quarter.
yeah.
So then I just multiplied the days times the average price per unit times the 6,000 units a day. And then I got 3,011,250 in revenues.
Yeah. So you just figured out how much it was per quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if they you're like you were saying, the early 2000, it was 6,000 units a day. Multiply that by the average price and then the number of days toward or in the quarter.
Yeah.
They'd be taking a pretty sizable chunk out of all the other guys.
Yes, it would. And you got what did you say, 3,000,000,
I got
11,000?
yeah, 3,011,250
Okay.
is
Yeah.
that what you got?
Yeah, because I just have a spreadsheet up too. So yeah, if they got that, it would be worth about that in the fourth quarter. I mean, in the first quarter, if they are up to that. Yeah, that's huge. And then
That's
times four, what you get per year.
well, and even then they'd keep growing from there. So I mean, to me, that was one of the arguments as to why I decided to stick with keeping the company. I figure they're having that kind of success just in their first quarter, um,
Yeah,
and then they're projected to have that kind of success in their second quarter in existence. There's absolutely no reason they should sell. And from what I've learned in my other entrepreneurship classes, it's a lot better to get a track record of doing really well so then you can sell your company for even more money if that's your choice.
yeah.
But so who is John Osher? Uh,
Oh, second question. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one of the things, I mean, he's a lifelong entrepreneur,
Hmm.
and he started. In his resume, it says that he started in business when he was 8 years old. I
Yeah.
didn't say what he did that young, but he was 8.
I think there was somewhere it did mention, but I forgot what it was. I mean, but he's been in business since the beginning, and then he's founded at well up to the point of this case study, he'd founded 3 companies,
Yeah,
and at least one of them had done really well.
and he sold them all because he sold the Hole in the Ear. He sold the Sphinx. Was that what? Yeah, the Sphinx, the Harvard Square, and then he sold his other one to Gerber.
Man, could you imagine? Oh wait, no, actually, he was on his 4th company by this point
Yeah,
because he had the spin brush. Oh, never mind. No, 3 because there's the Conservice cat toys and then the spin brush.
yeah. So that would be 4 because he also sold stuff to Gerber because he made that play yard for babies and the rainbow, the arc, for the toy, and that was sold to Gerber.
That guy had to have been well known in that industry.
Yeah.
That's crazy. um, yeah, the other one we kind of the last half of that question we kind of covered. How does he come up with ideas? And you had stated that he's just really observant and he paid attention to detail.
He did.
And really, that's from what I've noticed. That's how you discover opportunities. And then I think what really separates a successful entrepreneur from everyone else in the world is successful entrepreneur not only sees the opportunity, but they also act on it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've had so many ideas pop into my head throughout my life, and there's one that I'm like, dude, this would be super cool, but I mean, at the time, technology was nowhere near to the point. And then they started showing it in movies and stuff, and I'm like, somebody's working on it by now, but it's essentially Google Glass, but using contacts.
Okay.
And since I know absolutely no one in Silicon Valley, someone else is going to end up doing that, making a lot more money than I am.
Probably. Yeah, I'm not sure if I know someone in Silicon Valley or not. One of my husband's good friends is a manager for a company that makes computer stuff.
Hello?
Yeah. So,
Are you
but I'm
there?
not sure. It's in, I know that John lives in Tracy, California, which is close to San Francisco.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what company he works for. So, but I know that he's the boss. His boss is in another state.
Hmm. That wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. And he did that with a high school diploma. Because I've known
Wow.
John since I was in high school. Because I met my husband in high school, and John was one of his best friends, and so I've known him since then too. And John has a high school diploma. I mean, education-wise, that's it.
Wow.
He's just highly intelligent.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs either didn't go to college or dropped out. Mark Zuckerberg, he's now a billionaire because of Facebook,
Yeah,
which he started doing that, doing things that were not necessarily legal, but hey,
Yeah.
then you've got Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who essentially started out of a garage or whatever, and I think Bill Gates dropped out of school, and or Steve Jobs, one of the two.
Yeah.
But uh, my brother actually, he had an associate's degree, and with just an associate's degree, he started out on the very low end of the medical field and ended up on the corporate level of a big healthcare company here in the state of Utah, and they're kind of scattered throughout the U.S. as well.
Well,
And
that's awesome.
it's actually funny because his boss hired him and then found out his highest degree was an associate's and flipped out. He's like, everyone on this level has at least a master's degree, and all you have is an associate's.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to get your bachelor's degree, or there's going to be problems. He's like, all right. So he started working on it, and finally got it. But
Hmm. Well, that's
so,
great.
do you believe that the spin brush is a good idea? Moving on to question 3.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea because, the things that it was talking about are that customers, maybe, the huge cost of the electronic ones, and then customers, a lot of them preferred to brush the manual way. So this gave a great combination of the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the case, I think they said that most of the electric toothbrushes were at, I think it said more over $50. It was either over or more than, or I forgot
Yeah.
exactly how it's worded. But it was
Yeah. I
way,
think it was a lot.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. Says competitive electric toothbrushes from companies like Braun, the Oral-B, sold at retail for well over $50.
and most families aren't going to be able to afford that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of families wouldn't do it now. And this is, let's see, we're in 60s. That's 17 years later.
Yeah. And the high end toothbrushes in that area are still really expensive. Like my mom ended up with breast cancer 11 years ago, and one of her doctors like, look, you need to get one of those Sonic Care high end toothbrushes. And my mom's like, I don't know, dude. The doctor's like, this will do your teeth really good, and because of the chemo, it'll rot your teeth out. You have to if you want to keep your teeth. And so
Yeah.
my mom ended up dropping like about $100 on one of those things.
Yeah. So you think about that, and yeah, it's a lot of money, and most families could not afford to do that.
Hmm.
And I know when I was looking at the appendixes and I saw the water pick on there,
Yeah,
I remember that my dad got one.
really?
Yes.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but and well,
Though if it works,
besides
it works, right?
what
I said, if it works, it works, though, right?
it was, I don't remember our family using it for that long before it was like, oh, this is just a nuisance. So,
That sucks.
so, but as far as like, the spin brush, because being, simple, and it gave them both things, because it gave some of the electronic, which would give the better brushing and not be too expensive, so families could afford it.
Hmm. Well, and then too, I believe it was in this case study, they had mentioned how um, in the first few models where the motor broke or
Yeah.
whatever part it was, they didn't care. They're like, look, this is such a cool new thing and it's working out so well. Just go buy another one.
Yeah.
So they
But
didn't really have that shock in the market.
uh-huh. Well, because like even the expensive models, you still have to have a different toothbrush head for every member of the family. And I don't know if it said how much the toothbrush head it cost itself in here. So it's not just a matter of purchasing the unit.
Let's see. There was somewhere where it mentioned
I thought it was similar in price, like the $5 to $6 that they were selling the other, but that was just for the replacement head, or did it?
Yeah, it mentioned one of the other high-end electric ones and how much it
Mhm.
cost, but okay, hold on. Braun also sold an equivalent of 55 million replacement brushes at a suggested retail price of $6 per replacement
Okay.
brush.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
thought it was similar. Yeah.
and that's the high end of the two prices that they had
Right.
placed for their own product.
Yeah.
Let's see. Why? Okay, we'll move on to question four because we kind of already answered the last
Okay.
question three. How does John evaluate opportunities?
Yeah.
Four. Why haven't larger companies done a spin brush? Which actually, I remember them mentioning that there was one company that had already spent several years on. I don't know if it said it was like seriously working on it, but there was a company that had already been doing research for it.
Yeah, I remember reading that too.
Oh,
So,
here we go. Management of the Crest division of
yeah.
Procter and Gamble had been working on an inexpensive electric toothbrush for years, but no product had seen the light of day.
Yeah. So they just hadn't found a way to make it inexpensive and work well. Because being a bigger company, they probably didn't want to take the risk of something not working well when it came out of their, you know, R&D and into the market.
Hmm. Which would make sense because that would be difficult to try to build something that's of sufficient quality but cheaply enough to hit that niche market that was always there, but nobody could ever really get to because it didn't seem feasible.
Yeah. And it would also depend on who they were using for suppliers. Because if they were using, because like, Osher used a company in China to produce it. So if Crest and Procter, part of Procter and Gamble, if they were using something that was, a company that's more expensive because you're paying your employees more, then they wouldn't be able to make it as cheaply.
Hmm. Which is why there's a lot of offshoring in the U.S.
Yes, there is. There was an article I found on, it was on Harvard Business School Working Knowledge, one of their articles, and it
Hmm.
talked about the spin brush. And one of the things it says large companies look for the perfect solution and analyze everything to a T, as opposed to putting something in production, getting it going, and analyzing off of that.
Yeah. Well,
So that
that's
was part of the problems that the larger companies have, is that they want to make it perfect when it first comes out. And since it's not perfect, it just doesn't go anywhere.
hmm well, and in one of my other entrepreneurship classes, they talked about how, as an entrepreneur, you need to go more off of your feeling
Yeah,
because if not, you can get caught up in that loop that bigger companies have that you were just explaining. They
uh-huh.
get they get so caught up on, well, we have to have the perfect product before we can take it to market, and then all the bureaucracy and everything. But which is nice because that actually gives opportunity to entrepreneurs. But you just like you'd read in that article, you just need to act and then figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, how much do you think that the spin brush is worth?
This is the one I was having difficulty with, because like for me, so I think the spin brush was initially worth almost $500,000, and I based that on the percentage of retail sales it had during the first quarter on the market.
Mm-hmm.
But
See, and that question is always difficult, especially when it's not a public company yet,
yeah,
because there's not really good market data or even a really good way to calculate it.
mhm.
I mean, uh, you could figure out your own growth rate and do like net present value of all their future revenues for X amount of time and figure it out that way. Or, a lot of times it's just, hey, here's the market cap, that's how much they're worth, and things
Yeah,
like that. But it's difficult for me to really judge that because they exploited and opened up an entirely new niche.
right.
Um, and it was already within a mature market, so that makes it more difficult to put a dollar sign on it. And so I personally haven't really tried to figure out a dollar amount because, I mean, like you were saying, just that first quarter they made almost $500,000, and then if they stick to the averages, then they'll make 3 million in the second quarter, which is a ridiculously large percentage growth.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if they would continue that trajectory on growth and making about a 500% growth every quarter,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not really reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at the growth rate for the other companies, when it's for just that part, just the power toothbrush and accessories, I mean, the category only grew, about 5.1%, I think it says.
For volume sales, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, which is good because the overall industry is still expanding.
Right.
But at the same time, they're also entering an industry that's been mature for a long time. And they've had these major names in play for a long time. They've got plenty of brand recognition.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty, yeah.
So I think they would continue to have large growth, maybe not quite 500%, but certainly more than 200 or 300, at least for a few more quarters, as more people are learning about, the toothbrush.
Mm-hmm. And then especially bringing on that guy that had all those close ties with Walmart, that would help. Especially because if they do a couple of test markets and then increase sales, and Walmart says, "Hey, let's put this in all of our stores,"
Yeah.
that alone would explode their growth again.
Yeah, and then as more advertising went out, that would help it also.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one argument at one point that in the other class where we talked about this case that another student had made for putting or licensing the Crest brand, because if you get the name Crest on there, you have the automatic brand recognition, you have some brand loyalty, and then you'd see a lot of growth really fast, but you're also profit sharing through licensing agreements, and then you have the oversight to make sure that your product is complying to P&G's like their specs and all that fun stuff. You lose a lot of control doing that.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Okay. How would you place a value on a company? Well, it's hard for me to do. And actually, I remember reading, I think it was in one of my classes, they're like, if it's a private company, it's really hard to put a price on it, even in the professional world.
Yeah, I was trying to read some articles on how to do that, and it says,
good luck.
They weren't very, they weren't, the couple that I read weren't very helpful, so.
Good luck, get lots of attorneys and analysts, and then you still won't have it figured out.
Also, a good banker too.
Yeah. What do you believe? Which option do you think John should take?
Personally, I thought he should sell the company.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought of, let's see. Because if he licenses it, there's, like what you talked about, there's the licensing, you have the sharing of the revenue, and then there's, the quality of the product. Because I think I understood licensing the product a little bit different than you did, so maybe I didn't get that quite right. So is John licensing the spin brush to Crest? That means they're using his product. I mean, I know their names on it, but so who's paying the licensing fee? Would Crest be paying it to Dr. John, or would Dr. John be paying it to Crest?
Dr. John would be paying it to Crest. So it's like fast food restaurants. Like I was taking
well, yeah, I know that with fast food restaurants, that whoever the franchisee is, they pay it to the corporation.
Mm-hmm. And licensing agreements work really, really similarly.
Okay, I just didn't understand, which one was doing the licensing, because I thought of it being that Crest would be paying him because they would be taking the spin brush on as one of their products. But okay.
Yeah, so essentially what it would be is um, Dr. Johns would pay Procter and Gamble, according to their license agreement, to put the Crest symbol on it to make it look like a Crest product. It's still technically his product, but he's using the brand name, and that's actually a lot more well explained in the other version of this case study.
Okay.
It went into more detail as to how that would work, but essentially that's what it was. Is he was going to pay Procter and Gamble or whatever, but Procter and Gamble was going to have a lot more control over his product because they were going to allow him to put his name on it, just like a franchise
Okay.
franchisee does with a franchise in fast food.
Okay. So there would still be, the, like you said, the revenue issues, and then there's the quality of product issue, because would it stand up to Procter and Gamble's, their standards?
Mm-hmm.
Then so he wouldn't have as much control. And I thought, well, and then if he continues to produce it and sell it himself, especially with the large growth rate we talked about, the large companies are definitely going to take notice of that, and they're not going to just let that go. They're going to, put their own version of it out in the market. And with the advertising power and that they have, I thought they would probably put him out of business.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my thoughts on it. So I thought he should sell it because it's doing so well and has the huge potential. And if he sells it to a huge company, then not only does he get to make a huge profit on it, then he frees himself up to start his next business, because from what I read, it seems like he enjoys that, the startup part and then making the business successful, and then he's ready to start something new.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one thing too, like, because I thought about the sell option for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the reasons you had mentioned, especially because since there is nothing, and with that kind of growth, there would be a big company that would be willing to do that. And especially that someone's going to take notice of it, and then they're going to start working their own R&D to make a similar product. But the reason I chose not to go with selling it is just because up to this point in the case study, there was only the last quarter of 99. And then I believe, well, the sense I got was it was still early in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I know the actual case study was written in '09, but that's the feeling I got. So what I thought was to me, there's not really a long enough track record of growth at that rate to justify selling it yet. And I think I even wrote my case study, or maybe it was just a note I wrote, but if personally I was going to sell it, I would wait to have a little bit more of a track record, because the more of a track record you have, the more proof you have that your concept and your idea is successful, and it would make your product more valuable to a potential buyer. So, I mean, in the long run, because to me it seemed like this question is, at this very point in the case study, what would you do? And so personally, I mentioned, you know what, I would keep the company, because with this continued growth, um, I mean, already they're making, well, the first quarter projections that I did with my calculations was at $3 million, and they only had 9 employees. So
Yeah.
yeah, and if they did like equity sharing, or however they divvy up the money or whatever, that's a pretty good chunk of change per person for being, what, maybe 6 months into the company. Well, I guess 6 months into the market. And
Yeah.
then so I chose to keep it for that. And then let's see, I got to write. I didn't finish writing every one of mine, but there's also, I noticed that the stock value of those companies for the last 2 months, I believe that's months per tick on there.
Yeah, I noticed that all of the stocks dropped about the time they came on the market with the spin brush.
Mhm. Well, and their stocks dropped, but within that quarter, the entire industry still continued to grow. So
Yeah, it has an upward trend, but they all dropped, and it looks a little significant too.
mhm. Let's see, it was like, oh wait,
That's
that
on,
was the,
that's on
oh,
page 13.
mhm.
Exhibit 5B, it has the graph of the stocks.
Well, and it looks like if you look oh, never mind, that's Colgate. If you look, the S&P itself, the market in general, also declined. So that could have been explained by that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that before, which that would have been a good thing to realize before I started writing it.
So what page are you looking at for that?
The Exhibit 5B, the second one, the index of stock
Okay.
prices.
Yeah.
They've got the S&P as the diamond, and it's down toward Gillette's at the beginning, and then it's
Yeah.
the last three.
Mhm.
Well, I guess the whatever, but it went down as well. But like there's definitely growth potential within the industry as the industry itself is growing.
Uh-huh.
And then, like I explained before, they do a lot of profit sharing, and they are going up against a lot of big competitors. But the time that those big competitors would and money that they would have to put into R&D to pump out a product, they've still got probably a year or so left of no competition, no to little competition. So they could still pull it off for a while and end up selling it.
Yeah. Just as long as if if he is going to sell, not to wait too long, because like you said, if they have about a year, and if you wait too long, they've got their own product. They don't need to buy yours.
Yep. And then I also noticed as well on exhibit, what number is this? Exhibit 6,
Uh-huh.
the sideways one.
Yeah.
Within the last couple of years, there was a whole lot more like venture capital. I'm like VC. I'm like, what does that stand for? Venture
Yeah.
capitalist money that's been spent in the market in general as well, which of course a lot of that could have been explained by the dot-com bubble, um, which I believe most of it was. But there was a lot more investment, which meant there was a lot more capital, uh, money capital out in the market for them to grab. Maybe they could have, gotten some venture capitalist money or even good loans or anything like that to help them expand, help out with marketing, help with gaining partnerships with major retailers like Walmart and Target, because that would help them grow really fast and then
Yeah.
still have that upside. But in the long run, if I were him, or if I was him, most likely I would keep it for a little while and then see what happens when competition jumps in. Because I did last semester, I was taking my IBC courses, and one of them was a marketing class. And we were supposed to do all our projects and stuff on Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah.
And what it seems like it happened is the Dollar Shave Club started out and they grew really fast and it was pretty awesome. But it seems like the home delivery razor trend, or well, it's more of a fad, and it seems like it's actually dying off, and that market's closing. And I don't see that happening with a spin brush with that niche, but at least he could get that initial upswing and keep that personal gain in the company. And I said the same thing over like 5 times. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There was a lot more other ideas I had in my head, and I was going to get them written down, and then
Hmm.
didn't. Um, okay. How do you analyze the case? Like, what's your process of analyzing this case?
Well, I know the steps that they gave us to do, but this is the first time I've tried it doing the new way, because I've always just read them through and then tried to answer the questions.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
and
and
so
sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't know. How do you do it?
Well, like almost every class I've been through wants you to do a case study write up completely different than the other classes. So this is new, but I actually didn't really, and not consciously, but I didn't really go through the way that they had said. I actually was, well, I started out with reading the first part and the last part and then getting the situation down. But then after that, I had kind of already, based on what I already knew on this particular case and then the information I had read in the one they gave us, I had already pretty much made up my mind. And so I had spent a lot of time thinking about why that was. And that kind of helped me look for questions as to, okay, how do I prove my hypothesis? And then, so I kind of went situation, uh, proof, kind of, and questions. And then I went back to proof, and then I kind of did my hypothesis. But I don't know. It's just my brain has been wired more to be analytical, so I don't really, I don't know. The way they want us to do it, I think is kind of weird, but I understand why, because for a lot of people it would be effective,
Yeah.
but I'm also scatterbrained, so
Yeah, I feel that way too because I read it and it's like, okay, what is it talking about?
yeah.
And so it usually takes me a couple times to read it to understand it a little better. But I didn't really do it that way this time because I was trying the new way they suggested. So,
So this is interesting because we're supposed to put a timestamp on our summary,
mhm.
and all it says previous to this is at the end of your hangout, take time to give a summary. Um, what? Take time to give a summary, your votes, and final decision slash thoughts. Okay, I guess I can do that then.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
we can conclude.
because I think the from what it sounds like, what we discussed, sounds like the final decision might be hold on to the company for a little while longer, build it up more so it's worth more, and then sell it before new products come on, really start coming on the market so it's still worth a lot.
Yeah, before there's any serious competition. That way you probably maximize your profit at that point because the market would still be growing or that niche would still keep growing. So it sounds like we kind of settled on a combination of the two,
Yeah.
without fully understanding whether we're talking about at that exact point or within the near future. But yeah, I think that's an excellent idea is
Yeah.
to keep the company for a little bit, wait until other people get, relatively ready to go and then sell the company. Um, let's see, Spin Brush was a pretty awesome product. We think it was an excellent idea. It bridged the gap, the major gap between manual toothbrushes and the high-end electric toothbrushes. Made it affordable for more people, made it to the point where it was the same price as just the replacement heads on the Braun high-end electric toothbrushes. Um, let's see, trying to think of what else we could. John was, or Mr. Osher, John Osher was really good at identifying opportunities by paying attention to details, finding those opportunities, and then with his team to build companies using a lot of lean methods, lean on employees, but overeducated employees so that way they can do the work of more people to do it smarter and to see success more quickly and more enduring.
Yeah.
Uh, is there anything else you wanted to add to the summary?
No, that sounds good. But just as a side note, in the article that I read,
Mm-hmm.
it says that Spinbrush actually was sold to Procter and Gamble, and it says Osher and his team pocketed 475 million.
That's a nice chunk of pocket change.
Yeah.
Does it say when? Does it say when he had sold it?
This is like it was the article was written in March 2011, so it doesn't say when.
Okay.
It just says that it. Yeah, because this is on the Harvard Business School. You know, their research and ideas, working knowledge articles.
Well, you figure it out later, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's good. Thank you. You gave me a lot of things to think about.
Well, and I really appreciate you being willing to meet, especially, yesterday. Hey, you want to meet tomorrow night?
Yeah, it was fine because then I knew it was done and I didn't have to worry about it.
hmm I like to get my homework done early on in the week so I don't worry about, deadlines and stuff. But
Yeah.
that's just me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Well, you have a good night, and I'll email you about next week since we have two different cases.
all right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. You have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Bye.